Meera Sharma's name once echoed through every corner of Narsingpur, a bright, 17-year-old girl with dreams of becoming a teacher. 5 years later, that same name returned in whispers of horror when road workers uncovered a skeleton buried beneath the very path she once walked home on. A story that began with a missing girl turned into one of the most chilling discoveries the small town had ever seen. Beneath the layers of dust, mud, and silence lay the truth, dark, buried, and waiting to be found. It was the summer of 2018 when Meera Sharma disappeared without a trace. The sun had just set over the small town of Narsingpur, and the streets were glowing with the last light of dusk. Meera, a bright and cheerful 17-year-old student, had just finished her final school exams. She waved goodbye to her friends and began her usual walk home, a 15-minute route through a quiet stretch of road bordered by fields and old banyan trees. It was a path she took every day, familiar and safe, or so everyone believed. When Meera didn't return home by nightfall, her parents grew uneasy. They tried calling her phone, but it was switched off. Thinking she might have stopped by a friend's house, they waited. By 9 p.m., worry turned into panic. Her father alerted the neighbors, and soon a group of people began searching the streets with flashlights, calling her name into the darkness. The police were informed by midnight. Every hour that passed without news deepened the dread that something terrible had happened. The next morning, the town awoke to the shocking news of her disappearance. Police combed through fields, checked nearby wells, and questioned everyone who might have seen her. They even brought in sniffer dogs, but the trail ended abruptly near the old banyan tree. There were no footprints, no signs of struggle, nothing to suggest where she had gone. Rumors began to swirl through the town. Some said she had eloped, others whispered about abduction. But her parents refused to believe any of it. Meera was their only child, a kind and responsible girl who loved her family deeply. As days turned into weeks, hope began to fade. The small town of Narsingpur fell into silence, haunted by the mystery of its missing daughter. The days following Meera's disappearance turned into weeks, and then months, with no progress. What began as a massive search slowly lost its strength as exhaustion and disappointment set in. The police had little to work with, no witnesses, no CCTV footage, and no evidence. Every lead that appeared dissolved into nothing. One week, someone claimed to have seen a girl resembling Meera at a bus stop in another district, but when officers arrived, it was a false alarm. Another time, a local rumor suggested she had run away with a secret friend, yet there was no proof of any such relationship. Each false lead drained the family's hope a little more. The investigation eventually slowed. The town police, facing pressure from other cases, began to treat Meera's file as another unsolved mystery. Her parents visited the police station almost every week, begging for updates, but were always met with the same words: "We're still looking." Posters of Meera remained stuck on walls and lamp posts, their edges curling under the heat of the sun and the monsoon rain. Her smiling face became a silent reminder of unanswered questions. Years began to pass, and the world around her family changed, but their pain didn't. Her mother stopped celebrating festivals, and her father left his small grocery shop to focus on finding her, traveling to nearby cities whenever a new rumor surfaced. People in town moved on, though a quiet sadness still lingered whenever her name was mentioned. Meera's friends grew older, moved to colleges in different cities, and their once lively school group went silent. The girl who had once filled her home with laughter had simply vanished. As time marched forward, the mystery of Meera's disappearance faded from the headlines, but not from the hearts of those who had loved her. 5 years passed before the first sign of truth emerged. It began like any ordinary morning in Narsingpur, with workers gathered to repair a damaged stretch of road near the old banyan tree, the very place where Meera had last been seen. The monsoon season had eroded the ground, and local authorities decided to dig deep to lay new water pipelines. The air was filled with the noise of machinery and the clatter of shovels striking the soil. No one imagined that beneath that familiar road lay a dark secret waiting to surface. As the workers dug, one of them noticed something odd, a patch of soil darker and softer than the rest. When he pressed his shovel deeper, it hit something solid. At first, they thought it was a buried log, but as the dirt was cleared, a piece of faded fabric appeared, clinging to something white beneath it. Realizing it might be something serious, they halted the work and called their supervisor, who immediately informed the police. The digging resumed under official supervision. The smell that rose from the disturbed ground was unmistakable and chilling. Piece by piece, a human skeleton began to emerge, curled as if hidden in haste. A tattered fragment of what seemed like a school uniform was found wrapped around the remains. The police quickly cordoned off the area, pushing back the gathering crowd that had formed. News spread through the town like wildfire. Human remains had been found on the same road where Meera disappeared years ago. For the first time in half a decade, the silence surrounding her case was broken. The discovery reignited old memories and fears, and the townspeople stood in stunned disbelief. Everyone wondered the same thing. Had Meera finally been found, buried all this time beneath their very feet? The discovery of the skeleton sent shockwaves through Narsingpur. The police immediately sealed off the site and carefully collected every piece of evidence. The bones, along with the torn clothing and other items found nearby, were sent to a forensic laboratory in Bhopal. The investigation, long forgotten by many, suddenly became the town's only topic of conversation. People gathered in small groups, whispering about the possibility that Meera Sharma had been lying there all along, hidden beneath the road where children now played every evening. Forensic experts began their detailed examination. They studied the bones for signs of age, injuries, and trauma. The tattered fabric recovered from the site matched the type of school uniform Meera used to wear, and a rusted anklet was also found, identical to the one her mother had described to police years ago. The evidence grew stronger with every finding. DNA samples were taken from the remains and compared to samples from Meera's parents. The family waited in agonizing silence as the tests were conducted. Days stretched into nights filled with fear and painful anticipation. When the results arrived, they confirmed what everyone had suspected but hoped was untrue. The remains belonged to Meera Sharma. Her parents were devastated beyond words. Her mother collapsed upon hearing the confirmation, and her father stood motionless, his eyes wet but unblinking. The police announced the findings publicly, and the town mourned as if they had lost one of their own again. News channels and reporters flooded the area, reviving an old tragedy that had never truly healed. After 5 years of unanswered prayers, Meera's family finally had an answer, but it came wrapped in heartbreak. The girl they had searched for endlessly was gone, her voice silenced, and her truth buried beneath the very road she once walked so innocently. After confirming that the remains belonged to Meera Sharma, the investigation took on new urgency. The police reopened her old case files, dusting off yellowed papers and faded photographs. This time, forensic science and fresh eyes began to reveal what had once been missed. The skeleton showed a distinct fracture on the skull, caused by a strong, blunt impact. Metal traces were found near the wound, suggesting the use of a weapon, possibly a rod or pipe. It was no accident. Someone had hit her deliberately, intending to silence her forever. During a second sweep of the area, officers discovered something overlooked during the first excavation: a rusted bracelet half buried in the dirt, engraved with the initials RK. It was small but significant. The detail reignited curiosity among investigators, who combed through old witness statements. In one report, a neighbor had casually mentioned a man named Ravi Kumar, a construction worker who lived near Meera's school during the time she disappeared. He was known to take that same road daily and had abruptly left town shortly after her disappearance, claiming to have found work in Rajasthan. The timing of his departure now appeared suspicious. Further digging into his background revealed that he had once borrowed money from Meera's father but had failed to repay it. There had been arguments between the families, though they seemed minor at the time. Police began to wonder if this connection could have led to something darker. As the pieces started to fit together, Ravi Kumar emerged as the prime suspect. His absence for 5 years had erased him from local memory, but now his name was being spoken again, this time in anger and fear. Investigators were determined to track him down, certain that the bracelet and the skull fracture were only the beginning of a much deeper truth. Tracking down Ravi Kumar took weeks of effort. The police followed every possible lead, tracing old phone records, bank details, and employment papers. Finally, they found him living in a small village near Jaipur, working under a different name at a construction site. He appeared older, quieter, and burdened by the weight of his own secrets. The moment officers arrived, Ravi looked startled, as if he had always feared this day would come. He was taken into custody and brought back to Narsingpur for questioning. At first, Ravi denied everything. He insisted he had no connection to Meera's disappearance and claimed he left town only to find better work. But the evidence began to corner him. The bracelet with his initials, the fracture pattern on Meera's skull, and the timeline of his sudden departure all pointed to him. The investigators continued to pressure him until his composure began to crack. His story shifted multiple times before the truth finally emerged. Ravi confessed that on the evening of Meera's disappearance, she had confronted him about the money he owed her father. She warned him that her father planned to report him for fraud. Enraged and desperate, he lashed out, hitting her with an iron rod he carried for work. Realizing what he had done, panic consumed him. As darkness fell, he dragged her lifeless body toward the side of the road and buried her in a shallow pit near the banyan tree. He covered the spot with mud and stones, thinking the unpaved road would conceal his crime forever. For years, he lived with the guilt but believed he had escaped punishment. Yet fate had other plans. The roadwork that unearthed Meera's body also uncovered his long-buried secret, proving that even time cannot hide the truth forever. Ravi Kumar's arrest sent waves of shock and sorrow through Narsingpur. The case that had once faded into memory returned to the forefront of every conversation. The courtroom was packed when his trial began, with townspeople, journalists, and Meera's grieving parents attending every hearing. The evidence against him was undeniable: the DNA match, the weapon analysis, the recovered bracelet, and his own confession. Each detail painted a picture of a moment of rage that had stolen an innocent life and left a family shattered. The proceedings were swift, but the emotional weight was unbearable for Meera's parents. They sat quietly in the courtroom, listening to the recounting of events they had spent years trying to forget. When the judge finally declared Ravi Kumar guilty of murder and sentenced him to life imprisonment, a heavy silence filled the room. There was no joy in the verdict, only a quiet sense of justice. For Meera's family, it was not victory, but closure. They had finally found the truth, though it had come at an unimaginable cost. After the case ended, the local administration renamed the stretch of road where Meera had been found. It was now called Meera Path, a memorial to the girl whose disappearance had haunted the town for years. The banyan tree near which her body was discovered became a place of remembrance. People began leaving flowers and lighting candles there, silently honoring her memory. Her parents continued to live in their modest home, surrounded by her photographs and school medals. Though time could not erase the pain, knowing that the truth had surfaced gave them a sense of peace. Meera's story became a lasting reminder in Narsingpur that no matter how long darkness lasts, the truth, like light, eventually finds its way through the cracks of silence.